Welcome to Circular Fashion 2050. My name is Shamini Dhana, and I'm the founder and CEO of Dhana Inc. Dhana Inc. is a circular fashion tech company that's transforming the customer experience from zero waste design to social environmental impact through circular fashion. And the reason why we embarked on this particular featured talk series was because we believe that the next 30 years is going to be instrumental and pivoting towards the whole fashion industry. And we wanted to have conversations between brands, tech companies, all stakeholders who are not only just interested in circular economy, but also contributing to circular fashion towards this 30-year journey. Dhana Inc. is in collaboration and partnership with New Chip, and we want to thank New Chip for this opportunity of hosting this valuable and I would say even inspirational talk. Today we have with us Stephanie, and Stephanie Benedetto is the founder and CEO of Queen of Raw. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me. Very happy to be here.
Yeah. And where are you talking from, Stephanie?
New York City, normally. Right now in the suburbs, but very excited to be hopefully going back to the city soon. But if the accent doesn't give it away, New Yorker.
Well, that's great. So welcome again. I can't wait to dive in about this amazing discussion with our theme here, which is rethinking textile waste into real fashion. And it's what we would call more than $100 billion opportunity. But let's talk about our backgrounds first and how we got to this point with regards to circular fashion. It's the name of the game these days. It's starting to get the buzz. So Stephanie, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got here.
Yeah, it's funny. I come from a family background of over 100 years in the textile industry. So very much grew up around this industry and always loved how powerful it was and how it connected players across the globe. And, there was so much excitement and opportunity there. But at the same time, I disliked all the waste it produced and inefficiencies. And I didn't do the typical family route. I was on Wall Street as a corporate attorney, but ended up specializing in fashion, technology, sustainability. So I guess at the end of the day, we get back to our roots and to who we are, right? And when the market crashed in 2008 and 2009, not too unlike what's obviously going on in the world today. It was this period on Wall Street and around the world of darkness, right? And challenges and waste and greed and excess. And I kind of took that as my opportunity to go off on my own and turn that into an opportunity and go build a business to change the world. And that's what's inspired where I am now, which I know we'll talk about, but from that experience, kind of never looked back.
Okay, so that's funny because you're a corporate attorney turned fashion tech entrepreneur, and I'm the ex-banker turned fashion tech after 12 years. And we're very similar paths, I must say. I know this is of something we share in common. As an investment banker for 1999 to 2006, I got the privilege and honor to work in a country, India. I managed the India operations and was doing very well, senior vice president, and, got to mingle among the wealthiest of people and technology. But then I got to see firsthand the following. One, the exploitation of children, firsthand in the slums. Secondly, also just the devastation of the environment through fashion and the waste. And that was it. And I said, never again. I do something about it. In 2008, I also started Dhana Inc. So we come from this background of, having been on both sides of the equation, and then seeing how perhaps the stakeholders, such as legal and finance, can help us maybe move towards this this path that we're taking. Don't you
It's
agree?
all a critical piece of it. I couldn't agree more. And, it was definitely a valuable experience being on Wall Street and being an attorney. I learned a lot in public speaking, negotiation skills, the
Right.
stuff we do every day. But it also helped save a lot in legal bills in the early days of my startup, although we now have outside counsel. But, definitely there's value in having those experiences, seeing what it really means to build a business from the ground up, to grow it, to take it public, right? And all the things involved. So whether as an entrepreneur, it was very valuable. And obviously to see what was going on in the world and have this lens and insight into different industries was very valuable.
Yeah. So let's touch on that textile waste that we both are, now intricately involved. Dhana has pivoted since 2017 to only use textile waste for our up and coming products and offering. Why textile waste? Everyone's asking me that, I know. And you also have a point of view, and we merge in between and together. Why textile waste now? And what is the future of textile waste? And can it be turned into real fashion? Let me give that to you first, and then I'll share my thoughts as well.
Please, it's such an interesting, unique time. Obviously, coronavirus, but even before that, with trade wars and the impacts in China that was having. But now, of course, with closed stores, right? Missed seasons and collections, huge changes in consumption and buying behavior and needs. We're sitting on more unused inventory than ever before. More from fabric to finished goods. And that waste is obviously incredibly damaging. It's really bad for people. It's really bad for planet, but it's also really bad for a business's profit. And, it's a problem that has been going on for a long time. We all know it, right? Especially those who've been in the industry for a while. But until what's going on recently, we had just been focusing on making more and faster and new and just, at such a pace that by all senses of the word, it was totally unsustainable anymore, right? And I think if any good can come out of what's going on with the current pandemic, it is that people have woken up to this issue, that they realize just how unsustainable the old school way of doing things was, which is why it's such an exciting time for businesses like yours and what we're doing to be a part of this paradigm shift. We quantified what was out there. And I don't like to harp too much on the scary statistics because I like to show about what we could do to solve it. But just a few to highlight. One is that, yes, there is approximately $120 billion with a B a year worth of unused inventory, fashion fabrics that sits in warehouses collecting dust or traditionally gets burned or sent to landfill. And we also know one other interesting fact, that if we continue at the current pace of textile production, by 2025, 2/3 of the entire world's population will face shortages of fresh water and be exposed to hazardous chemicals from textile production alone. So we're not talking about 100 years from now, not talking about 50 years from now. We're obviously talking about today and on our shores. And so when you marry those two facts, 120 billion, really bad for bottom lines, right? And profitability and the economics, with how damaging it is for people and planet, it just doesn't make any sense. And so that's why we decided to tackle that head on. And the flip side of it is, and I like to end with a positive note, if fashion is that damaging, it also means that it has the power to solve the world's water crisis. And I think that's why we're so excited, obviously, to be doing what we're doing at this current time and to be working with you. This waste and what's out there, we can reuse it, bring down the rate of textile production, and still create fashion while doing better and doing good and doing more with less. And when people and planet and profit win, how is there any better way?
Yeah, no, I totally resonate with what you say. What I will add is, again, not boggling down with statistics, but the one that has been thrown out and a lot of people know is, every second a garbage truck full of clothing heads to the landfill. This is a $3 trillion industry, which is over 70% of all textiles actually end up in the landfill or get incinerated. My hypothesis here is, humans want to be the solution to climate change, right? They want to be empowered, and technology is here to enable you. And so when I was looking at, the conscious consumer, those who really understand what's going on in the world, who believe in science, right, and want to take up that challenge and be the solution, right? What I've realized is talking to hundreds of people in the last decade in fashion is they want to not only know data, of course, about what is happening in the fashion world, but where is it that I can use my ability to inject creativity to be able to then repurpose clothing, if we can do this, in order to make new garments, right? The tools haven't really been there. What has been given the choice is this, I almost want to say propaganda, like, you know what, you got to buy the next one. Otherwise, you're not going to look hip. And, hey, fast fashion is all that it is. And if you can dispose of it as quickly as possible and get the new one, you're going to be the coolest person on the block. Well, you know what? COVID hit, and everything is kind of changing now. And so what we are seeing ultimately is a shift in consumers and customers wanting to slow down. Slow down. They've realized this essential business is not about fashion, right? And so now you see the uptick in the last few years about secondhand clothing. There's a whole nostalgia about that. We're talking about retro now. There's an increase in demand. It's $51 billion in the secondhand market. And by goodness, we have 3 companies going public in the secondhand market. Now, who would have thought that would happen, correct?
Massively powerful and speaks volumes. And I actually was on a panel with one of the founders of thredUP a while back, pre-COVID, and we were chatting, and there was a question posed similar to what you just asked about, how can we do sustainable fashion, but still meet the consumers and the consumer demand where they are? They want, obviously, at the point of purchase to not have to pay a lot more. And they think sustainability and assume it costs them more. And they want to be able to keep up with social media and have different outfits every day. And of course, those 2 points are definitely shifting. But he said, look at the thredUP model. It's similar to what we're doing. And it actually allows you at point of purchase to find something at a discount for high quality things, while still being sustainable and doing good and being a part of the solution. And you can still have a lot of these outfits and keep recirculating them, recycling them, reusing them. And he said, in many ways, we are a competitor to H&M. And so there are ways, I think, in really interesting new business models that we're just starting to unlock and open up the door that can support that do make sense to meet the consumer where they are, that are good for the brand to create profitability and value while also doing good. So, I mean, it's exactly what you're doing, right? The idea and the ability to be able to customize and still make something new, but using things that aren't new. And there is that incredible value prop that goes along with it, and story and history. And it's exciting.
Yeah. Now, let me just delve a little bit about what I'm trying to say here about what we're doing to give context here. So what Dhana believes is, just like every other element you have, which is physical in your life, clothing also tells a story, right? And we make memories while you travel the journey of life. We don't really look at our clothing and have conversations about it, right? It's about what everybody has said. It's about what if you could, and use that. And so we're injecting that creativity through the clothing so that the customer now can design using fabrics, from a material libraries, just like Queen of Raw, right? Because they may not want to send in their clothing, but if they do, they can also use their own clothing to make new garments. And this, I believe, is the future of fashion going forward. It is when every single person, I believe, in a decade, if not less, will have created 1 or 2 pieces by themselves, right? Using the brand. So we call it co-creation with value. And so we believe that Queen of Raw is integral to this process. Why? Because you're not only being able to inject your ethos, which is, I want to be the solution to climate change. So I'm going to take overstock material, right? Fabrics, and let it not go to the landfill. So Queen of Raw is serving that purpose. and also being able to use my own wardrobe as part of new garments. So this is a new mind shift, a new kind of way of thinking. But Queen of Raw, I believe, adds more for brands. And so, Stephanie, if anyone were to go onto the Queen of Raw's website now, they see material, but then there is this huge intelligence going on behind it. Would you care to share what this is? Because it's phenomenal.
Oh, well, thank you. I guess it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, right? You see one thing, and then what is there that's behind the curtain that adds even more to the story and to the truth of what's there. So we did, to your point, and very much appreciate and excited about your support and our partnership here. We built Queen of Raw in its first iteration as a global marketplace. We had seen all this unused inventory sitting in warehouses around the world. And I said, this is just a supply-demand mismatch. There are still buyers who want access to these things. And so that's why we built it as a global marketplace, so that these brands and retailers, small and large, can buy and sell with each other across the globe. But as we were growing over time, we realized, to your point, there's a lot more, like any good business, like what you're doing as well as you grow, to do more for your customers, to support them even more. And so we realized that, for the larger brands and retailers, being able to sell their waste is valuable. It helps their bottom line, right? They can turn around, obviously, also and buy from each other. That helps them find materials at a discount. That's all great. But that's just a Band-Aid on the problem, right? We want to get to the root of the problem. Why do you have this waste? Where does it come from? Then who wants it and where is it going to? And how can you build out, to your point about storytelling, the story up and down the chain while capturing the valuable business data and analytics that historically have been dark data? Nobody knew, right? The old school way of doing things, it's like jobbers and middlemen who pay you pennies for this stuff and you don't even know what happens to it. But what if we could know these things and do better going forward? So that's where we built some very exciting software and tools for our larger customers that allow them to do just that. Figure out, why do you have it? What happens to it, and be able to intelligently over time predict how to minimize those waste streams. And we will tell them in real time things like the amount of water, the toxins, the energy, and the dollars saved by buying and selling and leveraging this dead stock as opposed to manufacturing new. Obviously, all while showing them that ROI calculator of how much money they've saved and made by doing it. And really excited to be able to offer that for the business value it adds to our customers, but also, which I'm sure you may be talking about, the value it adds to the end consumer in the storytelling, which is critical as well for top line profits.
Yeah. So that's excellent. Can we dive a little bit deeper into what you just said?
Yes.
So let's look at the business proposition here, and we talk about environmental impact. Today, climate change, everyone knows about it, but the amount of information we know, metadata on a piece of fabric, right? There are several different standards going on in the world. As there's the Higgs index, there's, the
ESG reporting,
exactly.
LEED, yes, it's massive, right?
So, I've often been asked in this capacity, why can't a consumer just get one score? One score to just tell us where this fabric or this piece of garment is on the scale between 1 and 10 in terms of good or environmentally polluting, and with all water emissions, toxics. And I said, it's not as easy as that. It's so complex. And so what is it that that Queen of Raw is doing in your intelligence algorithm that you can push that information or move the dial so that both brands and customers now can at least get some idea, be it the overstock, which nobody knows?
Yep. You're right. It is a challenge. That S word, sustainability, obviously means so many things to so many people, and it's created an incredible buzz right now, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but at the same time, there's a lot of different standards out there, and they're all wonderful tools because they stand for something.
Right.
If you read a certain standard, that it ascribes to certain criteria. That's great. But having all these different standards with different ratings and different valuations also can create confusion in the consumer's eyes and in the marketplace for people to understand what it all actually means. And the challenging thing is, I feel like fashion and textiles and these supply chains, they're hundreds of steps across the globe, right? Metric tons of water, chemical, crops, oil used in the process, and in such different varying degrees in different parts of the world that it has been very challenging for the sustainability community and the world at large to create a universal language and standard. And so when we analyzed the standards that were out there, we realized that there were some great commonalities among all of them, and there were some really distinct differences between them. And so for purposes of what we did, we did a deep dive with MIT and other partners into our algorithm of how we were measuring things like water, toxins, and energy. And we went a level deeper because this isn't just about, right, applying a Higgs standard, because there may be now, for example, you're buying dead stock or selling dead stock and you're not shipping things all over the world. There's another level of criteria of sustainability and of carbon emissions and impact that are now happening on top of just the Higgs index and the fiber composition of the materials. Things like that we had to build into our own kind of standard and apply it from and make sure that it actually fits with what's out there. So we can definitely map all the activities of what we measure to established ESG standards and to tools like the Higgs, but we also have our own criteria that we can apply on top of it. But at the end of the day, the complexities of the algorithm and the work we do, we tell our customers, like, you don't need to worry about that. What you need to worry about is that you get this report from an app on your phone that is digestible, that tells you what you need to know, and that can measure it month over month and year over year, so you can see if you're doing better against certain established standards, and that's it. And one of the great standards, I think, is the United Nations SDGs. They've done a really good job on a high level what the world should be working towards. But how you measure it and how you get there, that's the specialty of kind of what we are trying to build and what we do. And we have a lot of very interesting integrations and leverage tools like blockchain and machine learning in order to deliver that. But at the end of the day, the result is there.
No, that's great. In terms of the scope and the breadth, by the way, this particular podcast is being recorded to be sent all over the world, because NewChip has an accelerator program that has worldwide audience. And so in different markets, right, from Europe to Africa to India to Brazil, what has been your reach in getting overstock, dead stock fabric? And what have been some of your lessons learned? That would be great in working with these global markets.
When we started the marketplace, my team and I are based in New York City by the Garment District. We knew, and based on my prior startup, which was also in fashion tech, we knew we had a base here in the US to start with, and a problem that we wanted to solve. So we started and launched the marketplace in 2018, just in the US, with US sellers selling to US buyers. And surprisingly enough, there's a lot of inventory in the US that you might not be aware of, but it's here from all over the world. So that's great. But we very quickly, in talking about the challenges we realized, we very quickly learned that this is a global problem. And supply chains, as we just mentioned, are global and connected, right? And so when our customers came to us, they didn't want just US inventory. They wanted inventory all over the world, located where they were manufacturing, which was in all those places, in Africa, in Asia, in Europe. And so we realized quickly we had to go global. So we are on every continent, growing globally in key strategic regions through some amazing partnerships as well. And the biggest challenge had been on the supply side. The demand, it's been out there massively. We have not been able to keep up with the inbound increase in the demand we're getting from now. I think it's over 235,000 buyers around the world. The supply side I know the supply is out there. You know it. We've seen it firsthand. But
Mhm.
how do you get it quickly and easily from a warehouse into the web and then ultimately to the buyer's hands? That is the challenge. And so that's actually the original reason that we built some of the software and tools we're talking about, was to be able to automate and scale that process. Because it's one thing for a big brand or retailer to sell 10, 50, maybe even 100 SKUs on Queen of Raw and keep up with it. But if you're talking about, and some of them have thousands of SKUs to tens of thousands of SKUs with millions upon millions of yards of dead stock, managing that manually, uploading it to a platform, keeping everything in sync and the data having integrity to it, that is a massive challenge. And so that's where we built a lot of the magic of what lives behind Queen of Raw, the software and tools. So we can now integrate directly into a business's system, pull all that data in, work our magic, and go from there. So that's a lot of what we spend time building and solving for, is the supply side. And now as we've been growing to make it meet the demand globally. But there's dead stock all over the world. And my ultimate dream with all of this, sorry to our green shipping partners, UPS, FedEx, and DHL, but I hope in the future we never have to ship anything anywhere ever again. Yeah. And why? Because you got what you need, where you need it, at the right price, right? Located.
Touche. Yeah. So, touche. Absolutely. Yeah. And so you just mentioned a data point, which is over 200,000 buyers now looking at Queen of Raw. So when you're trying to get this inventory into the system, you can't duplicate Stephanie. So how are we doing this with technology? I mean, are you giving them tools in all these different markets, separately from the US?
That's critical, right? I mean, it's one thing to do something, but it's another thing then to take that thing, as you're working on, as you're doing as well, and grow it to scale and connect it globally. And so the way to deliver that solution, I do believe, is through technology. And I kind of knew early on that technology was going to be the way by which we do connect these dots in these supply chains. But of course, talking about challenges early on, we are selling a technology-based solution to one of, as we all know, the world's most antiquated, old school way of doing things, tech-averse industry, right? I mean, they're working on some multi-billion-dollar corporations that we work with. I mean, you may have experienced this as well. We're still doing things by pen and paper, or maybe Excel spreadsheet with handwritten notes. Absolutely. And I said, wonder you've got all this waste, right? I mean, and so thinking about what's going on in the world today, as things, if it slowed down a little bit, it does offer those powerful organizations an opportunity to start to adopt technology and digitize parts of their supply chain so that they don't have this happen again when there is inevitably a future period of disruption. And so for us, building the marketplace, key is to automate things and be able to grow and scale it so that, you are able to build it up to across industries and around the world. And so, we have spent a lot of time building out our software, our tools, and our platform in order to make those matches between buyers and sellers happen globally. So you can, for example, in one part of the world, when you search, geolocate the inventory that's located around where you are, the dead stock that's nearby. Or wherever in the world you are, as you start to search, it'll start to learn your preferences, the volume that you search for, the price point you pay. Are you fast fashion? Are you luxury? Do you want 10 yards or do you want 10,000 yards or more? And, can start to make recommendations. And then when it comes to actually facilitating the transaction, unlike, obviously, again, the old school way of doing things, you can add everything into one shopping cart from suppliers all over the world, click a button, and out the door it goes, and you get your deliveries, right? And there's no more of these multiple processes and inefficiencies and language barriers. And, it's all in one place, all in real time. That's really our goal. And so we do have fun app and the software and tools to deliver those kinds of solutions. But for our customers, we want everything to be quick and easy. Come to Queen of Raw and be able to find what you need. And that's where we're going. I mean, there's no reason that, Amazon and Alibaba are incredibly powerful organizations, but with what you're building and doing and what we're trying to do, let's build Amazon and Alibaba done right? Better trust, transparency, traceability, sustainability, you name it.
Yeah, no, agreed. Well, with regards to the customers, right now we're talking about it, it's going global. And the fact that there are 3 companies already going IPO here, right? Can you share, and I'm wanting to even like jump ahead and say the insights into these customers that we're looking at in the overstock market, over and above like Dana, of course. Um, are they actually the brands who want to deploy their fabrics that are sitting in warehouses primarily to an up and coming set of customers who could be brands themselves who are smaller that realize the potential of the how would I put it, synergy between being a conscious brand, right? And offering overstock, environmentally aware, and picking up the overstock from Queen of Raw. Uh, so there's marrying between brands now, working together on this? Or is it primarily a facilitation that they can use your system as an inventory to perhaps buy and sell in the futures market?
So to a very good question, when I first started the platform, I was under the assumption that larger brands and retailers would be selling their sample yardage, like 250 yards and under, to small and medium-sized brands and retailers. When we started, we thought it would be these larger brands selling to small or medium size. And everybody told me that, the bigger brands would not buy this stuff and they wouldn't want to sell to each other, and that there wasn't going to be this kind of volume out there. Well, since we've been growing, we have realized that, this isn't 250 yards or scraps off a cutting room floor. This is thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of yards plus of mint condition fabric. And not only would the big brands and retailers sell, but without naming names, they turn around and they buy. And talking about what we said in the beginning, this is the shift in the mindset, right? They see the economic value, they see the bottom line that it drives, they see the top line that it drives, because now they've got a great sustainable story around dead stock to tell their end consumers. And for some of our customers, they've actually seen 3 times the conversion rate in their online direct-to-consumer business just by talking about doing collections out of dead stock. Okay. And so for whatever reason they're doing it, those are great numbers. And at the end of the day, 100% organic white cotton is 100% organic white cotton, and they're all buying from the same places anywhere. So I think to your point and what you're building and doing, this is the future. Absolutely. Yeah. There are some brands and retailers who will use our platform and our software as an internal database, because now they know what they've got across their family of brands, especially if they have a lot of brands under house. And then they're able to reuse resources internally first, now that they know about it, which is the best way to reuse it. And then anything they don't reuse, they can sell. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, let me poke a little bit further here. So when will we get the stories where a smaller brand has now used a larger brand's overstock or excess fabric, and actually the name comes out that they've joined forces and they actually are producing, and it is something that now we can look at from a transparency standpoint? Because I find that being, again, in the future, but I don't see those sort of stories come out yet.
Yes, I know they haven't. You're quite right. And, but I think what you have seen, which is the beginning of showing something, are some really cool collaborations and partnerships, like the ones we kind of talked about, a couple that are going public in the reuse, recirculation right market. And ThreadUp, for example, has partnered with Macy's and JCPenney and others, right? And Rent the Runway. The fact that you've got these collaborations where these big box brands and retailers are promoting and selling and paying for partnerships with organizations that are in the recycle reuse space with finished goods, why can't they also do that up the chain and with raw materials? And so I think it's coming. And I also think, to your point, soon enough, I do believe, and we could talk a little bit later what I'm what I anticipate is coming in the future about this, but I do think blockchain is a big part of the future of supply chain. And at the end of the day, all that means is that everything is going to be trackable and traceable, and you're going to know where something came from and where and you can't hide anymore. So, the lawyer in me, sorry for no more NDAs, but, we should know where things come from, where they go to. It's just better for everyone.
Absolutely. So we know we have, Dana has this, the world's first, we call it the circular memory jacket. It's our signature jacket where you can put your memories in or dead stock or your own wardrobe into the lining. And then you have dead stock in the over as the outer shell. And then in the fall of next year, we're doing it the opposite way. So you can actually have dead stock and your memory stock. But here's the interesting thing. So we're launching our platform, right, at the end of this year. And we've been asked by customers, over and above our own memories, can we get dead stock from different brands, right? Because, we like to support their brands. So the Levi's of the world, or, the Patagonias of the world, or, even if it is a luxury brand and they want to be able to use Dana's platform, are we able to source then from that? And, here's a welcome join in, right, with the Dana platform. The customers are asking for that because they want to know that they are the solution, right? And so, with our partnership with Queen of Raw, we're galvanizing the world so that, let's talk about it. It's not a shameful thing. In fact, it should be celebrated that another customer wants to use a brand's overstock fabric. Why not?
There are some who are already thinking a little bit differently. I always get asked what we do with proprietary stuff. And of course, we have tools and representations with our sellers that they have permission to sell what they sell and that you can use it. But, what is proprietary and what's already is interesting. And of course, we would never sell anything that a brand wouldn't give us permission or approval to.
Sure.
But there are some great brands like Mara Hoffman who put everything up on our platform, including prints, and said, look, you can go to Canal Street, right, and buy knockoffs of people's stuff. And my stuff is already out there. Why shouldn't I stand behind this initiative? And we're on her website and everything to show that this is the future and what this company believes in and that they're doing good work. So I think that notion is definitely changing. And I'm excited to see in Dana's memory jacket and other products in the future, what they could say is, a carrying fabric or a piece of this and then how cool would it be to have a Nike mixed with a carrying mixed with a, in the future. As part of the story and the journey, and also increasing the value of these things.
Absolutely.
And if these brands could understand the value that gets increased by them being a part of those different pieces that they otherwise would never have been in the reach of their customer base and the data they can get on that, that is awesome power.
Oh, that is awesome. And it goes back to what we just talked about, which is blockchain, right? So let's bring in blockchain here. We believe it is also the part of the future. We've been told, not just our circular memory jacket, that maybe, celebrities may want to put their tour T-shirts, or, the sports fans would love it if, Stephen Curry or, the Manchester United were to send in their jerseys and, they sell these jackets. And, we're not just going to have jackets in the future. We're going to have like dresses and shirts and all that. But if a celebrity or a person who creates a new piece of garment, right, and hoping that not only is it circular because it's repurposing current already existing finished fabrics, but be able to pass it down to the next generation, right? And to be able to say, look, these are vintage pieces that I've collected in my wardrobe from people who are maybe known to myself, but maybe also known to others. In the next 10 years, this is going to become more valuable, be it a celebrity or not. And so to authenticate something like that is the key. And that's where I really believe that blockchain is going to be the future. And
I'm with you on that. We use it for a very specific purpose as well. Obviously, there is this ultimate goal of an end-to-end track and trace and transparency and 100% sustainable. But Nobody's going to get there overnight, nor do we expect brands to get
No.
there overnight. But where do you start and why? What do you do? And for us, starting with waste, which brands currently have, they're sitting on now more than ever, and they can monetize and get value, was a perfect place to start with digitizing the supply chain. But the challenge is, to your exact point, how do you know what it is? What it's made of, where it came from, and where it goes to. And that's where, with blockchain, we can actually create that record and that history with immutable data and integrity to it, to understand and be able to verify for our customers. Because remember, we're not touching the goods. So how do we connect those dots and provide integrity to the data of what we're doing? And that's where I think blockchain opens up a whole host of possibilities around data, understanding the movement and flow of goods through supply chains, the sustainability metrics, and the track and trace. Of course, it's a game changer.
So how far out are we talking about where this will become day to day? What's your prediction? Okay, remember this is circular 2050. Is it going to be within the next decade?
I do think within the next decade. I mean, blockchain obviously made a huge splash with crypto and Bitcoin, but I think for a lot of people now, there are those who obviously have adopted the cryptocurrency movement, but others who are just starting to understand a little bit of the value this adds. And there's some very cool startups doing work in this space now, like ours with blockchain and yours, and the ability to be able to do this. And I think that is only going to speed up in the coming years, because we realize how much we need it, right? How our business, how critical it is to any business with a supply chain. This isn't just fashion. This isn't just textiles. Anytime goods flow from place to place, connecting the dots and be able to do it with integrity is critical. Otherwise, how do you know what's going on in your business anymore?
Absolutely. Right. So what are you bullish about in terms of the next 30 years? Do you have some sort of view on what you're doing, and if you want to see Queen of Raw in the next 5-10 years? But let's start there before the next 30.
No, it's a good question, and we think about it all the time. I mean, I definitely want to connect and work with powerful players like you in the industry to build out this network and this community that can deliver on an Alibaba and Amazon done right. I think, and to what we were just touching on, we started in fashion and we started with textiles because it's a big problem to tackle, but textiles touch a lot of other industries, right? I mean, this is automotive, aviation, computer electronics, interior design. And so who are the other industries who could benefit from textile dead stock with each other is powerful. Right. And then also, how do you look at those other industries and understand what do they have in waste that could also be monetized? And so I think that's where we're exciting. It's kind of why we called ourselves Queen of Raw, for raw materials. This extends across raw material categories and across industries and around the world. So definitely excited to be working with incredible partners like you and others to build out that network and that connectivity. I also think that obviously, as we look towards the future, the millennials and the Gen Zs are only going to get more and more purchasing power and get as older, right? And they were born into this generation that really does care and are spending their dollars where it matters. And so I think that is only going to fuel even more what's going on. And I do see we have some questions coming in.
Definitely. Let's head to the questions here. Because you and I can talk forever.
You bet.
So let's look at this. Question: how can the established fashion industry better engage with grassroots local merchants who may be operating offline via non-traditional channels, for instance, Ropa Usada warehouses in the secondary and tertiary markets to acquire buyback secondhand clothing and integrate it into the development production of new fashion for major brands? Wow, that's a long question, but we get it.
No, it's an important question because talking about the challenges of what we've built and why we built it, that is what we kept hearing time and time again is, yes, the big brands and retailers have a challenge when it comes to technology, but go a level deeper to a tier 2, tier 3, tier 14 supplier, or these more grassroots local merchants and communities around the world. And they definitely have challenges when it comes to online and digital. And so, I think there are a number of different ways we should be engaging and supporting them. Of course, at the end of the day, I'd love to be able to support them with technology and tools to help give them access to global markets and to be able to, support them going forward. There's a lot we can do to take those offline, non-traditional houses and make them digital and online very quickly and easily. Now, as long as they have a phone, through an app on a phone, they can do everything we need to do to touch with our solution. So they don't, as long as they have an email and a telephone, that's all you need, and we can digitize all of it. But putting that aside, I do think that there are some great organizations and grassroots groups who actually make it a point, and we partner with a number of them in different non-for-profits around the world, who go on the ground and go work and help these merchants in order to be able to leverage tools like ours and get support on the ground as well. And that's critical too.
Do you want to just do a shout out in some of the organizations you partner with around the world that you work with?
Yeah, we've done amazing work. So in Africa, we do a lot of work with the Wildlife Friendly Enterprise Network. We are a founding partner along with Aveda, Kering, and Stella McCartney. And as part of that, we give the NGOs and the women communities in Africa who do beautiful artisanal textiles and beadwork access to our marketplace and our markets to sell their goods. We now have recently launched our collaboration with 200 Million Artisans and Blinded by Color in India, where we're doing wonderful work with India artisans and factories, small and large, to be able to support them as well with their dead stock and offload their dead stock and find new buyers. These are just some of the partnerships that are so important as we've been growing as well. So we have a number of other ones in China and other parts of the world, Australia. But if there's any way we can support and help, feel free to reach out and let us know.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Another question comes through. If you had one piece of advice to offer millennials and Gen Z consumers as to what sustainability standards they should demand from fashion and apparel brands, what would it be?
Do you want to do that one first?
So for me, again, that word sustainability means so many things to so many things, right? I would first look at what you value. What is it that you value in your life? Is it the social component, which is you want to know more about how workers are being treated, right? So this comes under social justice. You want to know whether it's a safe environment. You want to know whether they have a voice at the table to be able to speak up, and that they're treated with decency, dignity, given respect, and to be honored, right? So as a certified B Corp, this is really part of our ethos as a B Corp corporations. So that's a social part of it. Then when you come in terms of the values for the environmental side, you want to know, of course, like what we talked about, which is getting down and dirty about what is it that your clothing, if it's a finished product, has had on the environment. Now you can break that down into carbon emissions, water, toxic chemicals, and then there's of course the other elements, which is packaging, right? Where is it being coming from? Is it locally produced? Is it abroad? If it is abroad, are you doing carbon offsets, for instance, right? And then you have the other part, which is very much related, but people don't think about it, is you paying it forward to give back. So a lot of us give to organizations on the ground or nonprofits, but there's a reason behind that, because once you support nonprofits perhaps who are saving the earth on the environmental side, for instance carbon emissions and things like that, you are really impacting all of humanity, all of industry. So I would start with what is it that you value first, get to that granular level, and then go down to the brands that you endorse and ask them very specifically, this is what I value. I want to know from you.
My two little touch points on that, or recommendations for people, would be, one is, like the raw foods movement and the ingredients you put in your body that you read about, if you read the label on some clothing and you can't pronounce the words and don't understand it, it's probably not something you want touching your body 24/7 for the rest of your day. So read the label is a place to start. And the second piece is, there's some awesome companies like Good On You, where if you don't know about a company you want to buy something, but you just want to check, you can quickly Google them and it gives you a high level understanding. And then to what you were just saying, you can check if that comports with how you feel sustainability should be measured. And those are just two quick little things.
Yeah. And I want to also bring out this point because it is a huge important factor, and that there's a lot of greenwashing out there. So companies who say they are organic, right, or they use organic, for instance, they need to get certification. And then if you see a lot of stuff on the website, but they don't tell you where the production is, ask for that. There must be a reason. That should be transparent as well, right? I think that's really important. So I know we're going to get more questions, and I actually got some questions before coming on to this podcast or webinar now. And one of the things I had was, do you think that Gen Zs and millennials have what it takes to push brands, right? Especially fashion brands, to do the right thing? And if you were to ask them, if you were to tell them one thing to do, what would it be?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I absolutely do think, because they've got the purchasing power, the largest economic force, right? And if you've got the purchasing power, what you do with your dollars is going to decide what the brands make, because they care about their top line profitability, right? So they all absolutely have the power. What do they need to do? So one interesting thing, and this kind of ties in to the question that our dear friend Faith, I see, posted here, which is, what do you do at end of life? Because inevitably, we've talked a lot about creating new things. We've talked a lot about reusing things, but there will come a point where the fibers break down so much they cannot be recycled, reused, or repurposed, or the garment just cannot be worn anymore. That will ultimately happen. These are physical goods. How do we get consumers and end customers in order to participate in the activities needed to put things in the recycling bin, right? What needs to happen? And I think a couple things. One is, and I know Faith and I have talked about this before, obviously gamification. Right. The end consumer needs to feel a part of it and understand the value of what they have by doing that. And if we gamify the activity of going to that recycling bin, you just saved X amount of water and toxins. Here's your sustainability scorecard, and you're doing better than your friend Sally, or whatever. That makes you feel good, and you support each other in this, and in a positive way. And I think that could be very powerful to help them. But that's just one piece of it, is the consumer. Of course, we need the top down as well as the bottom up. We've talked a bit about how the big brands and retailers can take responsibility. But one initiative that Faith and I worked on was called the New York Circular City Initiative. Yeah. And that was backed by government and enterprise corporations and startups around what does it look like to get policy behind this, to change the laws, but then also to have startups and solutions to help businesses offset that legal liability that's coming. And I think those kinds of models that bring in the for-profits, the non-for-profits, the startups, government, that is critical to this movement. It's why you and I are partnering together, right? These partnerships, it's the future, and it's how we change the world.
Yeah, and Faith brings up a really good point and says, how can we start a campaign as consumers and citizens and communities that these waste management companies will take action upon? And that's exactly what you just talked about, which is the New York initiative. We're hoping that here in the West Coast, they'll announce something next year as well. I also believe that, Dhana has this circularity pledge that we actually talk about, which is reflect, reuse, the R's that you can imagine. But no matter what the state of the garment you have in your hand made with Dhana, we will take it back. Unquestioned. Absolutely. Why? Because we have a program as well. If you can't reuse and repurpose it, it actually goes into scrap, where we will end up feeding that into companies that will use it as new fiber, right? We also use it for our walls going forward when COVID ends and we have our flagship store. But let me ask you this fun question. Okay, so you take a plastic bottle, you take a glass, something made of glass from the grocery store, you make it, you bring it back, you get 15 cents on the glass, right? The container. What is going to happen to fashion? Where is the dollar going to be, or the not so much as the buyback, but when will we see feedstock of textile waste happening in terms of a dollar figure attached? Is it $1 a pound?
And I love that you're ascribing the dollar value to it, because that is, at the end of the day, a big part of how we incentivize change, and
Mhm.
the economics and the models have to be there. We talked about blockchain a bit, but the ultimate goal, once we do know exactly where something came from and where it went to, we know whose hands have touched it. And why couldn't all the key stakeholders who touch a piece of the good along the chain get incentivized, i.e. paid dollars for good
Exactly.
actions? And why couldn't, at that end of life, when we gamify it for the end consumer to recycle the goods, the company for the goods for whom they are recycling sends them that either incentive or coupon or dollar for making that contribution? As big or as small as it is, it adds up. And I think that there's no reason it shouldn't be that way in the future, and that everybody up and down the chain, not just down, shouldn't be supported. This also goes back to the farmer who sheared the sheep, right? It isn't just the end consumer, but how they contribute for the activities of the good work that gets done down chain. And so it is a part of it.
Yeah, no, I can totally see this coming, where eventually, a consortium of companies like yourselves and myself come up with, maybe it will be $1 a pound of feedstock, and it should, I think it really does. So as we are ending and getting to the hour, let's end with this note. Share with me, Stephanie. I mean, this has been wonderful just having a conversation with you. Three things you're bullish about in the future, and what you hope to see in the next decade, Queen of Raw and beyond.
That's a good question. I am very excited, although we didn't really touch about it in this, about the opportunities with AR and VR. Yep. Not just because it gamifies things and it makes it cool, but from a business and economic and sustainability perspective, being able to do things virtually, quickly, easily, when we're all at home without wasting resources and using resources. It's fascinating. And I think that there's a lot of interesting work happening there. I am very excited, although we've talked a lot about reuse and recycle, about the innovations in new fibers and materials that get made from regenerative resources, right? And bio-based materials. So there's a lot coming there. And we're just at the beginning of exploring what natural recurring resources we have that we can reuse instead of needing the plastics. But the most exciting thing, I do think, with these recycle, reuse, repurpose models, that we do have the power to solve the world's water crisis. And I'm excited to report back in 5 to 10 years that we've done so for our kids and future generations, all of us together.
Absolutely. And especially we both have kids, so we're just wanting to empower them. So no, absolute wonderful discussion with you. AR, VR is something that we're passionate about. We're actually going to be using that for our own tech platform ourselves. I think one of the other things I've talked to you about this is literally the virtual reality coming in for an explosion of digital fashion. I think we have that within the next few years. So on that note, Stephanie, thank you very much. It was such a pleasure to just have a conversation with you. This is being recorded. We'll be able to share this with the world. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Stephanie, it's Queen of Raw. And again, we would love to welcome you back to the community and talk about, 2050 in the next few decades. So
can't wait. We'll be here with you. Thank you so much, everyone. Be well.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. We'll see you in the next month on December 16th. Okay. Bye-bye for now.